Daughter, this is the story of a past love I never told you about. It was about 2 years after I started meditating when the seal on the colossal and complex monster of desire for love, which had been locked away in my mind, was broken, and it went berserk to devour the real me in the world of my mind. I believed that when I left behind the first love monster that the country girl had dreamed of, and the scars of that monster, and became free and happy from love, all the monsters of desire for love in my mind disappeared. But one day I received a call from a man from South Korea. He was someone who I had briefly exchanged greetings with when I visited my friend's office 10 years ago. At that time, both he and I were married, so I just greeted him as my friend's business partner. He said he came to the United States for his work and wanted to have a drink with me, so he got my number from my friend and contacted me. I met him, thinking of catching up on my friend's news, as he was my friend's business partner. When I met him, we exchanged various trivial stories, and he told me about his feelings for me that I never imagined he had. He said that from the moment he saw me at my friend's office 10 years ago, I was his ideal type, and he had missed me from then until now. So he asked how I was living, and said that having a drink with me just once was his long-cherished dream. I listened quietly to his story, thanked him for remembering me beautifully, and parted ways. At that time, while meditating, I realized that since he was my friend's business partner, he had been longing for the ideal image of me that he had created in his mind for 10 years. So, I thought he was in love with the fantasy he had created. I treated him politely, like a guest who had come from afar, and just had a drink with him. He treated me to a drink and went back to Korea. And he sent me a luxury tea set sold in Korea because he found out that I liked tea more than coffee. He also enclosed a letter explaining why he missed me. I sent him a brief thank you letter for buying me the tea I liked. Thus, while exchanging everyday trivial stories through letters, I could feel vague desires rising in my heart, and I could feel myself being abandoned. However, when my spiritual desires were washed away, I found that physical desires had taken a huge place deep in my mind. Only then did I recall his images and remember that he looked like the protagonist in the romance novels I had read, with his neat appearance and deep, clear eyes. He was of average height, neither too tall nor too short. Objectively speaking, he was a very handsome man. My first love was someone who filled my emotional void, while that man was someone with the ideal appearance I had created for the opposite gender. When I started thinking about him again, with his courage to come see me and his clean personality without any regrets, I began to develop a fierce and obsessive desire to possess him. A single desire that had been dormant in my mind became the spark that ignited all the monsters of desire in the world of my mind. From then on, I became a shadow of the desire monsters in my mind, agonizing over how to possess that man and spending all my time in torment. I had a husband, I had a child, and I had responsibilities and pride in the family I had created. I also had an emotional responsibility not to hurt my child with my desires. I struggled in my mind between the desire to possess that man and my responsibility to my family, wandering in a difficult battle within myself. At that time, the countless emotions that ran rampant in my mind amazed even myself. the various and intense emotional monsters began to haunt me 24 hours a day, leaving my mind in turmoil. Through meditation, I fought fiercely within myself to let go of jealousy, possessiveness, and other desires in my mind. I declared surrender to the intense emotions in my mind. And then, I told my husband about my state of mind and demanded a divorce. At that time, I even thought that if I could possess him for just one day, I would be willing to give up everything. Even though I knew I would burn in the fire, I wanted to jump into it to consume myself. However, my husband heard about my state of mind, and my meditation teacher came looking for me. Instinctively, I knew that if I met my teacher, he would make me abandon my insane desires. So I didn't go to meet him. At that time, I was completely crazy with my desires, so I didn't want to give them up. Even if my life fell apart, I desperately longed for my desires to be fulfilled. I also knew that if anyone tried to stop me, I would hate and resent them. Because I was meditating, I was aware of the changes in the various thoughts in my mind. However, recognizing my current state of mind was even more painful at that time. Although I knew that fulfilling my desires would destroy me, I couldn't resist because my desires were so enchanting. In the end, my meditation teacher came to me personally, and I had to meet him. I cried to my teacher, pleading why I couldn't live with the person I wanted. I cried, saying I would be happy if I could have him. At that moment, my teacher listened silently to my resentful mind, and then, calling my name, he said to me, "You must go inward. There is no joy outside. It's all a fantasy created by your mind." He postponed his busy schedule and personally trained me for several days. For the first few days, I resented my teacher deeply for holding on to me and teaching me meditation against my will. I had to fight against the desire to leave secretly and the fear that it might not be right to do so. I had no choice but to meditate for a few more days, thinking that I would confidently talk to my teacher and then go see that man. However, during those few days of meditation, I began to clear away many of my thoughts and emotions. Gradually, I faced myself, who was being drawn to the realities of my fantasies, and I was able to let go of them. After a few days, I developed the determination to find and discard all remaining desirs in my mind. The will to fulfill my fantastic desirs transformed into the will to let go of my desirs. As my mind changed in this way, my teacher suddenly called me to his office and, over lunch together, advised me to go back and diligently discard the remaining emotions. With his words, an unknown force deeply engraved itself in my mind, and I became prepared to uproot all the frenzied desires in my heart. I didn't want to be a slave to the intense and dreadful domination of the monsters created by my thoughts and emotions. Looking back now, I have no desire to relive the fierce battle with the vile desires I encountered in my mind at that time. It was a process of abandoning not only my humanity, but also my entire natural self, which is both human and animal. In this way, with the help of my teachers, I emerged victorious from that dreadful war. And the combat experience gained from that intense battle gave me the confidence that I wouldn't succumb to any allure of the heart monsters that might appear in the future. The fantastic me and my desires were deeply engraved as mere garbage of the mind, and I began a long journey of discarding everything about human society and myself. Subsequent meditations became an enjoyable and fulfilling journey of finding and discarding the false self within me. Years later, I visited Korea and met him, I calmly conveyed the intense battles of my mind and was able to neatly conclude our connection. While he said he felt happy to have loved such a beautiful person, I could only pray that someday he would meditate too. Looking back on the time I spent meditating, I realized that the hardest fight in the world is the one where you fight yourself to win. Whoever conquers themselves gains the world. My dear, do not be deceived by the desire called love. You're not loving others, you're loving your own concepts, customs, and body. People thoroughly love only their own concepts, customs, and bodily desires. Therefore, do not beg for love from others. Do not be deceived even by the altruistic love that humans possess. All human love in the world is false. The way to confirm this is very simple. False love never satisfies, and the hunger only deepens no matter how much love is received.